a conference in Kuala Lumpur 2 months ago, and listening from the presentation of the Japanese scientists, it seems that they were giving more burden to developing countries on the issue of climate change, forgetting probably that six countries in the world contributes 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions. The United States, with 300 million people, contributes 22% of the greenhouse gas emission, followed by China, 1.3 billion people, with 16%, simply because their economic situation is not yet at the same level of the United States. Imagine, Your Honor, Mr. President, if 22% of greenhouse gas emission is now being caused by 300 million in the United States. Imagine if the economy of China rises to the level of the United States. So meaning we will be expecting 4 times more greenhouse gas emission from China than the United States. And the United States is now contributing 22%. European countries are contributing 13% of the greenhouse gas emission. 13%, 16% for China. Japan contributes 7%. India, a nation of more than 1 billion people, is contributing about 11%, and Pakistan about 7%, and the rest of the world, 192 minus 6, or 186 countries, are contributing barely 37%. Barely 30%. And the rest of Asia is contributing 1%. And therefore the country is contributing way below 1% insofar as greenhouse gas emission is concerned, Your Honor. Now, when I raise the question of why the developing countries are putting the burden to the developing countries such as us on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which I think would lead us into putting into second priority our need for food. Your Honor, Mr. President, I filed a bill proposing for the postponement or deferment of the implementation of the biofuels until the time that we are able to attain food self-sufficiency, especially self-sufficiency in rice. We are an agricultural country, but we are #1 importer of rice in the whole world. And so therefore, if, for example, the OREC, Organization of Rice Exporting Countries in the World, will behave like the OPEC and determine the prices of rice as it's now happening, we will be the country that will be the hardest hit because we are the #1 importer of rice. I have nothing against biofuel, but you might remember that the air over Texas would be the same air that will be hovering over the Philippines. And so the effect of climate change is global, Mr. President. Now, Your Honor, are we a signatory to the Kyoto Protocol?
Yes, Mr. President. In fact, this Senate has ratified it.
And we have ratified it? The Kyoto Protocol?
I think it's been ratified not during the time that I've been here, if I understand correctly. It must
Okay.
have been ratified because the Kyoto Protocol will expire already by 2012, in 4 years'
Okay.
time. If this chamber has not ratified it, I think we would be remiss in our obligation. I
What
think it was
would
during
be-
the time that I was not in this chamber.
What would be the
It has been
basic
ratified,
purpose?
if I may.
It has
It's
been
ratified.
ratified.
Forwarded information.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. President, for that. What would be the basic purpose of the Kyoto Protocol?
Oh, Mr. President, to summarize it in a minute would be very difficult, but basically it's to seek compliance of signatory countries to lowering the emissions of greenhouse gases and for carbon reduction, to put it very simply. But Mr. President, you are correct. The same air we breathe, the environment and the desecration of the environment knows no boundaries. And you are correct in saying that the air we breathe here may be the same as the air we breathe in Mexico or Texas. However, I don't think that we must renege on our responsibilities as environmental warriors with the thought that we only contribute X percentage to global warming, Mr. President. And in fact, I think that if we shout loud and clear, and if we show that developing a third world country like the Philippines, that we would plant trees, that we will segregate waste, that we would do all the things which other signatory countries of the Kyoto Protocol have been doing, it would send a strong signal to the developing countries who are probably not in compliance with the Kyoto Protocol, or to the U.S. who has not been a signatory to the protocol.
Right. Your Honor, climate change, again, I repeat, the definition of climate change is change in the climate caused by man's activities,
If you
such
want,
as the use of fossil fuel